Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Opapari, and this is the Songwriters on Process podcast. Since 2010, I've been interviewing songwriters about their writing process. And on this podcast, we go deep, deep, deep into the writing process, far deeper than the usual. Do you start with the lyrics or the music question? By way of background, I have a PhD in English literature, and I'm a prose writer myself. I'm not a songwriter. In fact, I've never written a song in my life. But my goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers and poets, just as writers, plain and simple, and have always been interested in the writing process. This is an intelligent conversation between two writers. And on this podcast, like I said, we go deep into the process. We talk about rituals, the seeds of inspiration, the role of movement on the process, writer's block, the revision process, pens, pencils, types of paper, and of course, we talk about books. You can find all the archived interviews on the Songwriters on Podcast website and across all streaming platforms. And with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Who said that drummers can't be songwriters? Today we have on Ashton Irwin from 5 Seconds of Summer, or Five Sauce, as you may know them. Irwin is the drummer for the band. And, I feel like drummers don't think get bad rap sometimes. People think they just sit in the back. They don't write songs. Well, I got news for you. They write a lot of songs, and I've had a few drummers on, quite a variety. I had on a couple of years ago, Dave Lombardo from Slayer, and also Philip Selway from Radiohead. And all three, counting Irwin with that, all three are also songwriters. As a matter of fact, you obviously can't see it because it's the podcast, but we did this over video, and he showed me his guitar, and, he said he's got to have his guitar with him at all times, as like a crutch almost. And Irwin's second solo album is out. It is called Blood on the Drums. And this is a really cool conversation talking about his creative process. He's a big journaler. He loves to journal, but he says that songwriting is really the best way he gets those ideas across. And I really got the sense here that songwriting is not just something he likes to do. He does it out of necessity for his mental health. And I love that, but it's also, he feels like it's the best way for him to convey his thoughts and emotions. It's just to get those ideas out there. So he doesn't do it just for entertainment. He does it almost because he needs to. A lot of these songs start with phrases, he told me, phrases that offer themselves, and that's where they start. These phrases just come to him, not necessarily from like out externally. They just come to him in his mind. And he likes to write he said he told me when he's isolated, slightly uncomfortable, and it was when his back is against the wall, metaphorically. And I love this. We talked about the environment. I asked songwriters when they like to write. He was very specific. He likes to write from 11 to 3 each day. It all depends on when the caffeine is at its peak. He tries to get that time exactly when the caffeine is at its strongest. I love that. Also, he said he likes to write, and I thought this was a unique take on this too. He says he likes to write. He writes different songs at night. At night, he's more primal. He said he's less concerned about being tricky with the wordplay, and the songs are more beat-driven. And he says he uses the word animalistic, conjuring the energies of the night. So this is really a wide-ranging conversation about all aspects of the process. And he also said one more thing that I don't hear from songwriters. Most songwriters tell me that they like to make the process less precious because it's less anxiety producing. He's the opposite, or Irwin is the opposite. He likes to write in the Moleskine journal and make it precious because he likes that sense of the pressure. And that's something unique I didn't hear very often. So anyway, again, Ashton Irwin, latest solo album is called Blood on the Drums. And here it is, my interview with Ashton Irwin. I always start by asking the same question, and that is, do you think it's important in some fashion to create every day? Some songwriters feel like no matter how bad it is, you got to push through because that'll get you to good stuff. And others say that if you force it, it'll be derivative. So, where do you stand on that?
I think I understand all the approaches. I definitely understand and have utilized comparing songwriting to exercising. And to be healthy and fully put together at it, you have to do it most days. But I do believe the songwriting process matures over time. And as you get to know your psychological spaces, and you get to, you know, more master your internal world. As you watch your mind, I know that I go through seasons now of being active at songwriting and seasons of just living and paying more attention to my life, not as if it were going to provide me a concept, rather just living my life without thinking what material I can rip out of it, which I think is a more of a philosophy aligned with like presence. Because when I do get back in a room, I give all my presence to the songwriting, but only for a period of time now. I don't write every day.
So you're fine with that. It doesn't make you anxious to feel like after a while, why isn't anything happening?
It used to. I definitely have been through that uh guilt zone. But now I really do trust that I go through periods of listening, um, periods of living, and then periods of regurgitating and letting the subconscious mind spit out what you've been through, which I find most productive now for my songwriting. So I go season of living, season of recording, is kind of how I've done my songwriting in my 20s. Um, so yeah, I really do support the mentality that you have to exercise your songwriting daily. But I also now am on the fence about it because I know that that isn't my most effective process to date, although I've tried it.
So I've heard seasons. I've heard other songwriters, use the word seasons. So are the seasons arbitrary, or is there some regiment to those seasons?
The regiment to the seasons for me is always, I mean, I try to release an album a year. That's not really comparative to everybody. Some people release one every 4 years or whatever, but ever since I was about 20 years old, I've released an album a year, just about, um, with the slight speed bump here or there. Um, but yeah, it that's where I'm at with it right now. Yeah, yeah.
Um, do you do other types of writing besides songwriting, like journaling or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of the songwriting is cathartic for my mental space. Really, externalization is the general concept that songwriting is, but I journal as well. The externalization of my inner world is really healthy for me, and I've done it ever since I was a kid. And I find the most emotional version of the externalization is the songwriting. I find that really, when I tap into a flow state and let my lyrics flow, I really discover what I'm trying to say or the feelings I'm trying to understand at a more sophisticated level than me just journaling. Um, it comes out in a more elegant, poetic, metaphorical way. It has layers, and I look at it and I see a clearer reflection of like who I am, which is why the songwriting seems to be a really productive psychological tool. Um, I'm someone who has to keep track of my mood, and that kind of thing for mental health. I really journal and externalize a lot, but it comes to a point where I want to take that to a more extreme level, and that's when the songwriting kicks in.
So does that journaling ever lead to song ideas? You think like, you're writing about something and you think, you know what, I feel like a song's coming in, but it happened because you were journaling in the first place.
Totally. And it comes in the form of phrases, interesting phrases that lure me in, and the phrases that you feel lucky that you wrote down. A lot of those can turn into album titles, song titles, or just project names. But when I'm writing songs, I usually have a project name, whether that continues to be the album name or not. I usually have a working title for the general concept anchor for the project I'm working on. And that usually comes from journaling. Yeah.
So is it journaling an everyday thing for you?
I'd like it to be. Sometimes, yeah, yeah. I definitely want it to be, so I'll say yes. But definitely 2, 3 day gaps. Sometimes I'll open it up and be like, oh my God. I mean, it'll say July 1st and it's July 9th now, you know? So yeah, I'd like it to be an everyday thing, but I'm kind of a master of none. I practice all different things all day long. I go to the drums, then I go and record some stuff, and then I go and play guitar, and then I go and do these interviews, and then I go and do something else. And it's all like these little inches forwards of the mastery of this whole artist thing in a modern world, you know? So sometimes the journaling can fall to the wayside because I might need to be working on something else, like, musical directing a set or all different stuff. Yeah, so I'd like it to be every day, but sometimes the other facets of what I do take over.
So I've got some quotes up here from authors that I like to read to songwriters to see how they react to them. So this one is
Okay.
from we're talking about this a little bit. This is from Joan Didion, and she says the impulse to write things down is a peculiarly compulsive one, inexplicable to those who do not share it, usefully only accidentally. So I want to discuss like the impulse. I certainly, and I'm a prose writer, not a songwriter, but there are times when I absolutely feel the impulse and I
Yeah.
can't explain it. I feel like I have to write.
Hmm.
Um, so I know we've talked about the seasons, but how often do you get the impulse where you feel it inside of you, like this thing has to come out? There's that impulse to create.
I feel that on all different levels, but the main one for me as a contemporary songwriter, as a pop songwriter, to say, I mean, I can write all different forms, but that style for me, the words or phrasing has to be alluring enough to pique my interest to motivate me. Because I've released maybe 350 songs. Um, and to me, the phrase, the metaphor, or whatever it is I'm working from has to be interesting enough for me to come back to. Uh, so to get that impulse to write, that really stems from me at least practicing writing down the phrases when they offer themselves. I could pin a phrase on my noteboard up here for 4 months and just look at it, and it'll probably give birth to several other phrases that end up all being songs. And that's how I come up with an album. It's like relative language. You start to build a bank of words that are kind of, for lack of better words, that are themed um, under my impression that the world's turning into a dystopia or something like that. So you're all of a sudden writing an album called The Wastelands or something. And then you start to tell your subconscious mind day to day, when you get the impulse, write something down if it's relative to the working title that you're working on. And that's how I start to bank song names and that kind of thing. And usually that process is just before I go in and actually make the songs. So I'll have all these phrases that were from impulse, that I've written down and kept it track of. And then I'll go, excellent. Now I'm in the studio for 6 weeks and I have 26 phrases that are relative to some kind of album I want to write, that's themed, about a dystopia or whatever the hell.
So the phrases are all connected to that idea.
Usually, yeah, because, they're all subjective to my life and my perspective on the world at the time. So,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, so I really do rely on the impulse, but it's anchored by me setting a mode early on in the writing process, going, this is what I think is timely in a contemporary sense. I'll write about this and let that magnetize to me.
How often do those phrases come to you externally? Signs that you see, restaurant, you hear a phrase. I mean, I love stories from songwriters who they're at a restaurant, they hear a phrase and they go into the bathroom with their phone and start typing stuff in. So, how often does phrases come from external sources?
Mm. They usually come from slightly embarrassing places, either like arguments, um, drunken ramblings with your best mate one night, and you go, "Oh, wait, that's really good." And sometimes the next day it's terrible, um, but it also comes from looking at other artists' catalogs. For instance, I'll do this a lot, and I'll go, "What's the song they didn't write?" And you'll try think of a phrase that, say for instance, if it's Nine Inch Nails, um, and you'll look at their catalog and you'll look at the songs and you look at the language that, for instance, Trent Reznor uses, and you'll go, oh, it seems like, oh, it would have been great if he had a song called, whatever that you're
Yeah,
searching for. Um, and then you'll go for that. But it always comes from an external world, but it also comes from mishearings.
I've heard
Sometimes
that a
I'll
lot.
sometimes I'll hear a song through a wall and I totally didn't grasp what the hook was, but my mind filled in the gaps. The gift of association is what we have. So we spit out what we aren't sure of, and we problem solve naturally. So let your brain do that. Um, so yeah, through the wall, I'll hear a song, and then a new song comes out of my mind instead. Um, and yeah.
I've heard that very often. Okay, now I believe you're the second drummer I've ever interviewed. The first one was Dave Lombardo from
Oh yeah,
Slayer. Okay.
yeah.
And Dave told me the story, and I'm interested in drummers specifically because I feel like more than any other instrument, external sounds can give you ideas. So he told me a story about he put a pair of his shoes in the dryer to dry off, and the beat of the shoes going around in the dryer gave
Yeah.
him a melody, a song idea. And I've heard other things like turn signals. My God, the guy from Stu McKenzie from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard told me he gets ideas. Car alarms give him ideas all the time. But I feel like from drums more than any other instrument, I feel like you could get those ideas. I'm dying to know how often you get beat ideas or melody ideas from the external sounds that you hear.
Often. That's just kind of a trait of the whatever the drummer disease we have. It makes you hear every turn signal as a 2/4 beat. It makes you hear even the birds. Your brain tries to quantize the chirping. I don't know what's up with it. It's everything has a beat and a rhythm and a way. Um, I hear everything like that. One thing in relevance to this conversation, it's not as uh, referenceable as me kind of hearing the world around me or anything. What I'll do is if I'm feeling a particular way, if I'm feeling energetic or I'm feeling like I had a great date with someone last night or I'm feeling like particularly youthful or something, I'll sit on the kit and my emotional state really will bring out the bedrock of the beat formations and that kind of thing. That's really the greatest gift of it is, well, I'm feeling this way. Here's the beat that would feel like that. And that's where I started to develop songwriting. As a kid, I didn't have nice headphones to play with. I just have my dad's lawnmower headphones that to keep his, ears safe on the ride-on lawnmower. So what am I going to play to on the kit? The song in my head. Um, always the song in your head. I mean, the song in my head is where the songwriting started, just sitting down on the drums, not having anything to play along with, just playing along with something that I'm making up in my mind, which is really where it began, probably.
So is there an ideal emotion where you're most productive? Do you feel like maybe extreme melancholy can make it too difficult, or extreme euphoria can make it too difficult? And I want to follow up with this also before you answer. The number of songwriters who have told me they get their best ideas when they're hungover. Uh,
Oh, I
and
know it's terrible.
okay, so can you tell me why that is? Because I don't see how that would be possible. All I feel is pain, and we have these. I always hear these theories about why. So what is
Right.
it?
I think the fog is thick in your mind. I think you're feeling loose, but I think you're also feeling disconnected from responsibility. I think you're kind of feeling like, well, I really let loose and I feel like shit. And I'm starting to feel, I mean, and this is the rock and roll attitude of the classic heroes we loved. And I might just fuck around on my instruments today. I feel like crap, and that's the only thing that's going to boost my serotonin or whatever today. And that just feels good. And all of a sudden, you're spitting something with more attitude out because you're caring less, or
Hmm.
you're feeling looser and a little less clear on what's right and wrong. You're just spitting out some natural flavor that you've picked up the night before.
Yeah, I've heard that. I think also I've heard just you're slow, like you're more in your head, and you can't really focus on external things because of how crappy you feel. And I don't. It's so
Yeah.
funny.
It's
Uh,
weird. Like being hungover makes me feel like I'm like cosplaying a rock star or something in the studio, you know? So I guess that's fun to lean into a little bit. Yeah, I'm a bit fucked up today. But I'm still showing up and I really want to make something. So leaning into whatever your brain chemistry is, I guess, is what I'm saying, whether it's, you're a little hungover or you're on top of the world or whatever. And it goes back to one of your first questions,
yeah.
right whenever, right. Don't be too picky or idealize the state of mind that you'd prefer to be in, I guess is what I'm saying. I've always respected the studio time and never miss the days unless I've got, some kind of deathly illness. But um, I always respect the time I got to work and get songs down. I That's really been the most productive thing for me is always just show up and get it done and never leave until the song is done. I don't leave work unfinished. And That's been really crucial in the songwriting thing.
So I'm embarrassed to say I have interviewed another drummer, and it's Philip Selway from Radiohead. I can't believe I forgot that. That was a couple of years ago.
Oh, he's amazing.
He is amazing, and he had so maybe like probably 3 years ago he had a solo album out, and he said that he still has to because we talk about, and this is why I'm getting at here, the role of the environment to the writing process. And he said that he still has to write all of his songs on his drum stool. Even when he's not in front of the drums, he still has to write. I said, clearly this guy can afford another type of chair, but he still feels like the stool is the best place for him to write lyrics. And I thought that was so funny, that routine, that ritual. And I absolutely have a ritual. Like I write in this chair, but I revise in that chair behind me.
Oh yeah.
I think it's so important to know, if we can, what works for us, whether it's time of day, place, things you have to have with you. And you interview, if you talk to prose writers, they will tell you they have that ritual. So I'd love to know how important all aspects of that ritual, time of day, place, things like that, how important is that to you?
I guess speaking in that level, my first impression would be that seems to be a luxury. That seems to be the more success I've had as a writer, the more ideals I have, that I try to make things more comfortable. But honestly, the best music I've ever written, uh, or been a part of in a collaborative sense, has been in the worst, most awful studios I never want to return to. And maybe that has something to do with it. If I create something good enough, I won't ever have to come back here. But but it's never been ideal. If I'm too comfortable, it really doesn't help me at all. I realize that I do write my best or most interesting phrasing and most my most interesting vocabulary pops out when I'm feeling isolated and slightly uncomfortable and kind of back against the wall. Because I write out of necessity. I never got to study or anything. I'm fully self-taught in terms of songwriting, and as most songwriters are. So I don't write with too much predetermined like knowledge or you know anything. I'm trying to. I don't search for ideals in the songwriting. I wrote songs to improve my life,
Mhm.
uh, and that still is true. I always want to write something that uh, improves my life, whether it be my self confidence to continue writing, or whether it be a song that sells out shows or that kind of thing. I am interested in those things because songwriting in the beginning, before I had some success with my band Five Sauce, was necessity and survival.
Yeah. Is there a time of day? I'm a morning person, but is there a time of day when you're most productive as a writer?
Yep, 11 to 3 p.m.
I
Uh,
love it. Okay, so no one's ever given me that specific of
yeah.
an answer. So that's amazing. How did you arrive at that and why that?
It's something to do with my caffeine addiction. It's right when the coffee peaks at about 11. And then it's the brilliance of the caffeine and the caffeinated mind slowly shimmers away into the distance uh as the afternoon goes on. So and then maybe I'll need a break, and then I write very different songs at nighttime. Yeah, but I'd really prefer to get the lyrics done during the day when I'm feeling most active, mentally. Yeah, that's
What do
super
you
important.
Yeah, what do you mean you write different songs at night?
The songs I write at night seem to be less concerned with being tricky, for a better sense. Like they don't have the perfect melodies, they don't have the lyric that you haven't heard yet or anything like that. They are more beat driven, more animalistic to some extent, more yeah, really conjuring the energies of the night, I guess is such an 80s thing for me to say.
Hmm.
Uh, but it really feels extremely different. Yeah. I really am when I'm writing, I'm really conversing with the energies of the day or the night. So, um, yeah, super different processes.
Is there a chair? Room? Is that important to you? No, it doesn't
No,
matter.
I just need this sitting on my lap. I don't even need to play it. Even if I'm not like my guitar needs to be just here. Uh, and it if I'm holding this, I feel like it's a some kind of psychological aid that makes me feel comfortable and helps me to spit it out. So it's really my only thing. I'll always have an acoustic guitar um, just with me at all times. That is the practice of being a songwriter. Is it's always with me. I'll take it everywhere. I'll take it everywhere I go. Um, like some kind of traveling like guitar player of old. I'll always have it with me because it's like my defense mechanism or something. It makes me feel comfortable, makes me feel ready to spit out my feelings when I'm holding a piece of a piece of wood.
Yeah. So my follow-up to that is because again, I'm songwriters tell me some of them have to be walking around when they hold the guitar.
Uh,
There's something about walking from room to room playing where maybe it's the movement
hmm,
that they are more productive. So does that matter at all?
not really to me. I'll there's a few levels of safeguarding my productivity in a day because I'm going to get that song. I just can't leave until I've gotten the song. That's a lot of songwriters have mentioned this in the past, I believe. But so what I'll do is the only thing that I'll start pacing is if I have 30 minutes left in the session. Um, the guy I'm working with has a dinner at 8 always, and I'm not satisfied with how the day's gone, and I want to get this song in the bag. And I know if I just walk in there, I stand up, I put those headphones on, I say loop that verse 40 times, and I'll just write, correct, right, and get it in the bag through the flow state instead of sitting in the room and thinking, uh, in the control room or whatever, and thinking about what we're going to say. I'll just get in and say it. And it turns into a really different process then. But that would be the most upstanding. I try picture I'm in front of an audience and I go, just what do you want to say? You're in front of 1,000 people right now. Say it. Say what you need to say. Spit out the best thing you could possibly spit out right now. If you were in front of an audience, and I use visualization to get that goal, and to get something worthwhile recording.
But there has to be, I would think, is there a point when you feel like it's not happening? I've got to set it aside and come back to it later. So are you comfortable? You have to be comfortable. And there's certainly times that I feel like I'm writing and it's like, I got to take a break. Like I'd love to push through. And it's amazing what 24 hours will do just
Hmm.
to clear my mind. So are you comfortable doing that as well?
I'll admit defeat eventually. Uh, Eventually, I think I'm just somebody that has to be really disciplined and hard on myself. The thing I'm afraid of most is becoming someone that says, tomorrow.
Yeah.
That just isn't going to work for me. It's not going to get me very far because I'm like deep down, I'm a guy who can be quite lazy. I love to be at home. I love to just chill. I can be extremely productive, but I have to hold myself accountable for my own success. So being, you know, that's one of the things that has really helped me through my life, just as, definitely holding myself accountable to finishing the thing I want to be great at. And I'm writing contemporary music. I'm not writing classical compositions. Usually, the song isn't that far away from being finished. If you have, a great hook idea, a great bank of words already, there's many, many ways to finish the song that day. And it might not be perfect, and I'm down to rewrite, but I always think I need to hold myself accountable to getting that song in the bag that day. I think it honors my confidence, and it keeps me in a habit that I can be proud of and lean on when things get tough. And say, for instance, I signed to a major label, and we got 2 months to make a record with someone like Andrew Watt, who's producer of the year. And I'm not going home without finishing those songs. I mean, I want to honor every single minute and hour that I get to do this, So that's where that kind of pressure I put on myself comes from. I want to make sure I'm honoring every second I get on that mic and say something that could save my life or change my family's life.
Okay, now I want to ask you a couple more questions about the actual process. And when it comes to lyric writing, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
Oh, I hate looking at screens when I'm writing. Obviously do not disturb. You can flick it on, but I'm disturbing myself when I'm on my phone. There's so many people I could text, or so many distractions. Um, I'll I quite often, I'm guilty of this, and it's a bad trait. But if you're writing with me and you're the first one to get out your iPad or your phone, you're the scribe. I'm purposely not going to get out my gear if you're already doing it. Um, that's a really kind of, and I'll just spit lyrics all day, and I'll be like, I'll record everything so I can go back and recall what I was saying. But I really don't like to be on anything like a digital screen for as long as I can, at least not until I'm in the booth actually doing a vocal take. Um, but pen and paper works really well. I'm sure you've heard so many people say this, but I'm not going to write anything down with my physical hand on a physical piece of paper with actual ink that isn't at least worthy of spitting out. I'm not gonna, because I'm gonna check it first, and I'm gonna think, am I really gonna write that down? Like, and it helps. It's like a extra layer of filter. Um,
Actually, no one has said that.
really,
No, no,
it is
because
you know.
no, because here's what they say, that it's if you write it down with a pen and paper or pencil, and this is the other part of this is, if you don't like something, do you cross it out or do you erase it? If you cross it out, it's always still going to be there. You can come back to it. But some people say, no, I don't want to even look at it. I have to erase it, but then it's gone forever. So it's funny you say that, because I think people, at least my experience has been, it's no, you just get everything out there. There's something about a
Hmm.
computer that makes it feel like it's more official.
Totally. I'm actually the opposite. I think if I put it in the computer, it doesn't mean shit.
So funny.
And if I put it on paper, I'm a visual person. So it has to look beautiful. It has to be like, that is a beautiful phrase. I'm glad I wrote that down. And it has weight to me then. And it again, intrigues me and lures in my interest to continue the concept. I think that's just a chosen relationship with actually writing stuff down, as it's kind of a classic thing to do now. I don't think a lot of people younger than me even are using pen and paper that much. But I love my buying a little, going to Ralph's or wherever the hell and buying that little moleskin journal that whatever I put in it, I treat it as, yeah, a filter. If I'm going to write it down, it has to be good enough for me to, want to do that.
How about color of ink? I could talk all day about colors of ink, how important that is to songwriters.
It's got to be black ink,
Why
black
black?
ink, black ballpoint. It has to be a little smeary.
I
It
love
has,
it.
it has to look poetic. As ridiculous as that sounds, it's like this is. I write like my grandfather, and I write in cursive, so that really helps me. It looks beautiful. It's. They say, you can. I don't even have the quote right. We're gonna have to find it, but you know the way someone uses their handwriting is kind of like a little bit of the language of their soul. Like you can see the way they're feeling the words in their head by the way their handwriting looks. So I kind of go off that a little bit. It's really important to me to have beautiful handwriting and to write things down that look interesting to me. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two comments. One, I had Jerry Harrison on about a year ago from the Talking Heads. He said it's got to be a felt tip pen because he has to, the sensation of the scraping.
Yeah.
And I love that. He has to feel it scrape.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you this. Most songwriters tell me that treating it too precious gives them too much anxiety. So
Mm.
rather than the moleskin, they will find a utility bill, the back of an envelope, a receipt, because if you write it on those things, there's less pressure and it's less precious. And it's like, it's not as big of a deal. But if you're doing it in the moleskin journal, there's more gravity to it, which gives you more anxiety. I'm not saying either one is right, but I do hear, I hear more of a deliberate sense to make it less precious. But
I'm
I love that.
I'm under the impression that my anxiety is like a superpower, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more anxiety I feel, the more willingness I have to kind of find my way uh, to a deeper satisfaction emotionally from what I'm writing. Um, and that comes with, I just think the pressure is incredibly important. It could be unhealthy. I don't know. But I think that's the only way for someone like myself. I'm not really a professional writer. I don't think I could write a book. I might give it a shot, but the way I hold myself accountable to a standard is I allow myself to feel anxious because deep down I know my ability needs to be worked on. And to feel the anxiety or to feel the pressure or to feel the weight allows me to know that I have boundaries to push and allows me to really question what I'm writing, where I'm writing from, what my mission statements are. I think as a songwriter, you need a mission statement or mission statements. Uh, but yeah, I do put pressure on it. I do put pressure on it. I think it's useful to me.
Okay, so the exact opposite of that. I've got two more questions. One is we're going all over the place.
Yeah, cool.
My favorite quote is by Agatha Christie, and she says, "The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes." And there was an article in the Washington Post a year ago about why we get our best ideas in the shower. It's because when we're doing something that requires no thought, that's when the creativity happens. So I'd love to explore that idea with you about how often that happens that you get ideas when you're engaged in something. I mean, driving, speaking of the talking heads, David Byrd says, I've got this up here. A car is a good place to write lyrics. Driving occupies one part of the brain, freeing up the other.
Totally. And there's simultaneous processes happening for me all at once. And driving is one of the best ways to write lyrics. If I have a recorded piece of music with no lyric, that's heaven. Driving around the car, cranking that demo with no lyrics yet, and magnetizing in your subconscious, going, hey, what is it? And starting to explore melody. You got the windows rolled up. You can start to scream all kinds of bird noises or whatever you think would be an interesting melodic cadence. It's really about, for me, it's about um, freeing myself, whoever that wild guy is on the inside that likes to, come up with songs and rock and roll and be a performer, be an entertainer, all these things. He doesn't come out easily. He's not really the main guy for me. I'm more chill, but I have this entertainer that exists within me that needs to be prompted through being set free by a great piece of music or whatever. And I just explore that and I allow that to be unconscious if I'm feeling secure in the writing environment. So a car, as David said, is the perfect environment for writing lyrics because you just explore being kind of, being a pop star or whatever. It's all kind of like finding this little bright spark inside you that is playful with the music. It's not so judgy or anything, and you allow yourself to be free with it. And this is how you discover your performance character, or your suit of armor, I call it. It's like, this is the version of me that's indestructible to critique, and just feels very free and liberating. So I kind of play with that spirit inside myself, and that's kind of the unconscious version of me, because I'm not wondering if I'm being polite.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wondering if I'm being taken very well from others. I'm not wondering if I'm saying the right thing. I'm not wondering if I'm aligning with anything. I'm just being free, and that's really what the whole thing is to me. So yeah, it's all about the subconscious for me, all about those unconscious thoughts, all about freeing that inner energy that is waiting to express itself. But you got to put it in a good environment.
Okay, last question. Ernest Hemingway famously said, or not so famously, that all writers should go to art galleries to get inspired. And I do find that songwriters, for the most part, are voracious readers. But I'd love to explore, how much you get to read, how often you are influenced by other types of art.
Always influenced by other art. I think, particularly, I've never taken it too seriously either. My partner is a abstract artist, so she's painting all day, Um, Super bizarre stuff sometimes. Other times, romantic portrait of a meal we ate a week ago, and I didn't know that she was photographing that in her mind, and it's this beautiful setting that when we had a meal together or something, or but it's always more inspired by the beauty that others see that that I maybe didn't see. And it gives me the ability to be more sensitive. And less focused on my own perspective of things. I always am obviously surrounded by other musicians and that kind of thing, but the people that really interest me are like comedians and stand up comedians and like slam poetry. There's a lot of stuff out here in LA where a guy I know, he's one of my favorite poets. His name's I forget his last name. His name's Steve. He's one of my mates, but he gets up and he used to weigh 450 pounds and he'll get up and talk for 20 minutes about his transformation into he's a bodybuilder now. And hearing that kind of stuff relates to me because I write music to transform my inner world. So I like people that have the grit to get up and elegantly and powerfully uh, convey their story of transformation that really inspires me. Uh, yeah, but then again, I'm very introverted, and I also think there was a bit of a controversial guy to quote, actually, but I will anyways. Kanye said the best influence is to be uninfluenced, and that rang very true to me as well. Uh, I have to say that was that was kind of true for me. The less I care about what other people are doing, it seems I get better at what I do.
Did you get to read a lot or no?
I read more philosophy stuff. Like right now, I'm reading "Think on These Things" by Krishnamurti. I'd be more into reading about philosophies or critiquing the way we think than reading something that's made up. That interests me more. I think a lot of my concepts are about my headspace, and a lot of my concepts are about the positive inner dialogue I'm trying to create with my pain or my emotional state. Um, so I really do like to study um, the way I'm observing my mind. That's really what songwriting is. You're watching your thoughts pass by and you're fishing for good thoughts. Um, and I like to study that because that's really has a lot to do with spirituality and mindfulness. Because I'm essentially watching my life play out here, and I'm choosing what to document through my art form. So I like to read, yeah, about those kinds of things. That's more interesting to me.
And that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget my book, Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, comes out June 25th on Hachette Books. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is one of the guitarists in the band Lamb of God, and this is his memoir. It's a damn good book, if I do say so myself. But again, that book is out June 25th on Hachette Books. You can pre-order it now everywhere, your favorite online bookstore. So be sure to do that. The site, Songwriters on Podcast, contains all of the archived episodes of the podcast. Of course, you can find them on all streaming platforms as well, but they're also on the site. I only have had the podcast for about I don't think even 2 years. Before that, all of the interviews were transcribed, and that took a lot of work. And that's why I started the podcast. So if you want to read the interviews that I did before the podcast, they are on Songwriters on Podcast as well. There are about 200 of them going back to 2010. So check those out. If you want to get a hold of me, Ben at songwritersonprocess.com, or fill out a form on the website. I'm here for your questions, your complaints, your concerns, or your interview suggestions. I'd love getting those as well. So hit me up. I will try to respond. So that's it, everyone. Have a great day and see you next time.